The warm waters of some uncharted sea lapped against Tad's cheek like a hound with a warning. One eye opened, and he was rewarded for his wakefulness with a stinging splash of salt. All the gods be damned! His voice snapped out as strong as ever with words he'd never dared utter before running away to sea the year before. A good village boy he'd been, but a plague and a blight left most young folk parentless and without promise of any hopeful future. Tad sat up as the next wave slipped over his bare feet and ankles, but scooted up the beach before the third. A few more curses fell from his lips, but acting out never got him anywhere. It wouldn't get him anywhere there either. The beach, strewn with bits of board and other flotsam, stretched far toward a rocky point in the west, and backed up to a thick twist of jungle behind him. There had to be fresh water somewhere with all the green. Tad was smart enough to know that, but also smart enough to know that wicked things lurked in the jungle. Snakes and big cats with teeth the size of his hand. The ship was gone. Whether crashed to bits on the rocks or sailed away after the storm, he didn't know. It didn't matter. What mattered was finding water, and food, and shelter, and rescue. He shook his head. Rescue? No one sailed these waters, mostly because there was no profit in it, also because of the pirates. They found profit anywhere, but they didn't need Tad to do it, so they wouldn't be coming back for him. The sun-drenched morning turned into a deep green afternoon, then into a fitful, frightening midnight blue, and then to green again, over and over again, only punctuated by red berries on a vine and dew on huge leaves, and some frog spawn skimmed from the surface of a murky puddle. That had been a bad idea. The fifth day, or maybe it was the sixth, Tad stumbled out of the green mess of creepers and eerie sounds into a clearing. Vines grew over everything, but the canopy opened up and let in the sunlight. There, ranged about the place in an oddly perfect circle, stood 5 stone pillars. "There's an odd thing," Tad muttered. He'd taken to speaking aloud as he trudged through the wilds. The monkeys didn't seem to care, and he figured maybe it might scare off some of things more murder-minded. For the first time, something else spoke in that unknown world. "Do you hear it?" The whisper came low and dangerous, like a nighttime warning, even though the sun shone bright. Tad stood stock still, frozen in place like one of the stones, his gaze darting around as much as it could without turning. "Stay still, and they can't see you, right? Was that the way with beasts? Do you hear it?" The voice was no louder, but it seemed to come from off to the left, and Tad turned slowly in that direction. Maybe it was lack of fresh water. Maybe the frog spawn affected his mind. Maybe it was the loneliness set in quickly after months shoulder to shoulder with all his shipmates. "I hear you," he said, even though that wasn't really an answer to the question. A sigh of wind whispered through the clearing, rustling the green leaves of vines and his greasy hair. The heart beat beneath the soil. It's slowing. Without me, this world will rot, and you along with it. "This is madness." He spoke aloud, which proved it. Halfway across the clearing, striding with as much purpose as his tired legs would allow, Tad's worn boot tangled in a creeper, and he spilled onto the ground. The vine tore away from the pillar, but yanked on another. Then another trembled. Then the worn grey stone on the left shook, then toppled to the ground. Despite being cushioned by the growth of who knew how many years, it cracked with a mite sound and broken into pieces among the green. Another wind flashed through the clearing. Another sigh that almost sounded like a voice, and Tad rose to his knees, staring as the bits of stone began to glow. At first, the sparks of blue-white light danced along the edges of the broken shards. Then they coalesced and formed a shape, something like a man, but different, that rose from the jungle floor to tower over the crouched sailor. "You will rot. All will rot." The words came stronger now, the voice like something out of a dream filled with darkness. Tad daren't lift his eyes. Who are you?" "You wouldn't know my name. It has been—" The blue fog light flickered, a ripple running through the man-shaped thing like moonlight on water. It has been so long. Something in the air seemed to shimmer, and the other stone pillars whispered and groaned with some forgotten words. Or maybe it was just the approaching twilight and the sigh of wind through the jungle leaves. Tad's parched tongue and uneasy belly faded into the background as new worries took over. Maybe this was madness. Maybe the days... No, wait. Weeks? He shook his head as the glowing form loomed over him. I'll let you in on a secret. Mortality is the real madness. Break its chains and I'll peel away the world, layer by layer, until you see the truth beneath. It's already rotting. Help me tear it apart. The jungle shifted and sighed around the mysterious clearing, a low roar of death and life beyond anything a simple sailor could imagine. He couldn't understand this world. He couldn't resist the deep voice of the god in the stone. He couldn't even tie a good sheepshank until Smythe showed him 3 times or 4. Smythe and Crabeye. Dieter, who they picked up in a rowboat half a league offshore beyond the Mediterranean. The ones they picked up in the Caribbean who didn't have names, only dark staring eyes and blood under their fingernails. All gone now. Probably not dead. He was the one who was dead, even if his body didn't know to lie down and give up yet. Tad's mind danced back over the things he knew, the things that had turned into dreams of some other life. He tilted his chin and stared into the glowing, unseeing eyes. What must I do? Wake the others, and together we will destroy this life, this mortality. The rot will fade, the oceans boil, the skies weep fire, and all that crawls or swims or breathes beneath them will beg for oblivion. But together, we will rise above it, shaping the darkness like clay, bending it to our will, like we once did before the believers left, before the jungle reclaimed our garden. He slowly rose to his feet, stumbled through the tangle of vines, and approached the next stone pillar in the circle. He glanced back at the glowing god, and then leaned forward to touch the stone. Nothing happened, and he pushed harder, harder still, with all the strength left in him after days of thirst and hunger. It toppled with a resounding crash, and a shockwave went up from the jungle floor, shaking the very ground beneath Tad's feet. One by one the stones fell, cracked, glowed, and then, free once more, the beings of light and death met and melded into one, glowing so fierce Tad squeezes his eyes shut and fell to his knees. The world became light, then fire, then darkness, as the forgotten gods regained their power and flashed skyward to claim all the world beneath them. Tad lay there, a soft breeze against his cheek, the scent of green growing things and flowers in his nose, the dust of ages on his lips, and waited. For what he couldn't tell, death had already claimed him.